bring the meeting to order. Peter, are you here? Not that Peter. Peter. No, we'll skip that. Okay. Tom, do the pledge.
All rise. Uncover, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom, you're also up.
Okay. Do I need a microphone? No. Can everybody hear me? No. No
He
what?
said no.
It's like talking to my wife.
Use the mic, you gotta get right up there.
Right up close.
Really.
Okay.
Eat the microphone.
No, thank you. Okay, summer's over, and the skullduggery is starting to move forward as we move into the fall. Is that better?
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple things I want to bring to everyone's attention. Part of it went out last night in email regarding what our president is proposing to do and getting us back into the United Nations Global Gun Registry Treaty. This is something that was introduced by President Obama, and it died in the Senate. It was not ratified. As you know, treaties must be ratified. President Trump pulled out of this deal, and it just languished. So now, President Biden is bringing it back out and hopes to push it through the Senate. This would require Americans to fall under the rules and regulations of the United Nations for gun control, something we do not want. So, we all need to keep the pressure up on our senators that if this thing comes to the floor, it must be defeated. Absolutely. So, that's item number one. Item number, item number two is something that's going through the Florida Supreme Court presently. It is something that goes against normal policy within rules and regulations of the state. Meaning a higher authority passes rules down the line and a lower authority can't countermand it. What's going on right now is a number of our downstate municipalities and our agriculture commissioner, Nikki Freed, is pushing this through the court to be able to make rules and regulations at the city, town level that countermand state regulation. Now, Joe might even be able to talk about this a little later. It's called the policy of preemption. It's important. We don't want it, and it's something that our state representatives should address in Tallahassee. Whether we agree with things like constitutional carry, that would eliminate all of this skullduggery going on in the courts, and it would keep it from happening in the future. So that's what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention today. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Mike Watson. Oh, Tony.
We have 139 members and $3,470 in the treasury. And we have Constitution booklets up here if you would like one.
And when are we gonna make a new donation to the North Fork?
As soon as we talk to him. I've talked, Charles is looking to know when we're gonna make a donation to the Westport High School. We haven't done that yet because the last time I talked to the, a leader over there, I can't remember his name. You, no, I can't remember his name. Ron, you know his name, what his name is?
I have his number on my, oops.
Well, whatever his name is, the last time I talked to him, he said he didn't know what he wanted the donation for, and then they were not in school, but now they're back in school, so I need to talk to him and see.
Ray DeGar.
Ray DeGar, yep. We need to talk to him and see what he wants to donate to so that we can donate our money to him and Westport. So the answer is we don't know yet, but we will be.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What does a new gun that they shoot cost?
New one?
I think it's about $2,000.
Yeah, $1,500 to $2,000.
Is that a quality gun?
Well, I don't know much about it, but I assume it's a quality gun for $2,000. What's that? Yeah, but I didn't know what the price, I don't remember what the price was.
Yeah, I don't remember the price.
Yeah, it was $1,500 to $2,000.
Yeah, and the 1,500 might have been a used one that they got,
I think it was.
I think it was.
but $2,000 would be for a new one. And, you know, he could have mentioned that they need a new gun, but he didn't, so.
Well, whoever talks to him should mention it.
Pardon me?
Whoever talks to him should mention it.
Well, we're gonna talk to him, and we're gonna donate. If we don't, then we're gonna find somebody else to donate to that's just as worthy, but,
Hey, Barry.
except for Bob, he can't have it.
Barry, we have a lot of new members, and they might not know, but the Westport is the closest high school to us, and Ray has been involved in shooting sports for the kids, you know, through the ROTC program. And last year he brought three students, and they were going to the Nationals.
They were doing very well.
They were doing really well, and we've been supporting them for about maybe 5 years now. And it's a really worthy charity, or you know, because they don't get a lot of money from the school. The kids raise a lot of the money for their pellets and what have you, and their targets. And so, being that we are an NRA kind of supporting group, it's a worthy cause.
It's very worthy. And the kids are all good and motivated too. A lot of the kids that go on into the military after that. One of them went into the Navy Academy, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They just are a good group of kids, and we want to donate to them. One thing we need to know, though, is whether Ray is going to continue, because he has been talking to me about retirement off and on. And when he retires, unfortunately, that program will go by the wayside. So I need to check with him on that and see how long he's going to be there, because I don't know if he has any substitute or anybody that could take his place or not. He's a good guy, and he's very motivated for the kids. Peter, would you like to say the prayer now?
Yes, sorry about that, gentlemen.
No problem. Yeah, I'm ready when you are. You want to use the mic?
Yeah.
Can we stand for the prayer?
Absolutely.
We did that already.
Please be seated. I was already.
We can stand for the prayer.
We're standing now, let's.
Yeah. All right. Make sure you bring the microphone up close.
That's right. Let's pray together. Dear God, we want to thank you for this opportunity to come together as the Oak Run Shooting Sports Club. We lift up our nation to you today. We pray for protection from the pandemic, an end to the suffering and loss, and that you quickly provide an effective cure. We pray for the military and political struggle in Afghanistan. Protect our soldiers, our citizens still trying to escape, the churches, and all those who have helped us through this conflict. Please push back the darkness over this nation. We pray for those recovering from the extreme weather conditions. Please deliver us from any further suffering and loss. Remember our friend and fellow member, Mike Erickson. Bless his family memorial tomorrow and comfort their hearts. We lift up Don Dancer, Peter Moritas, Gunny Wheeler, and all other members struggling with health issues. Bless our club leaders with wisdom and strength. Bless every member and their families for a wonderful month ahead. And bless our time together today. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Peter. Are you okay? You're allowed to do that. Mike Watson wants to talk about a couple things.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mike.
Here's some prices for some more ammo that my friend sent, Bill.
Some of it's rifle, and some of it's
Some of it's rifle,
some of it's pistol, and some of it's rifle. So look at the top of the sheet and see what you got.
He is a federally licensed ammunition manufacturer. So he has a legal license to do, and most people that make it and sell it don't. So he is legal and registered. And I ran out of check with other people. You can,
Pass it around.
yeah, we can get you his email address and have him email it to you. So he does rifle and pistol calibers, and his prices are up a little, but he was spending a lot of money for parts recently, and that's part of it. The other thing is the Outpost Range is having Todd Jarrett come and give a little demonstration Tuesday. He's a nationally ranked shooter, IDPA and USPSA. Even if you watch him for 10 minutes, you can learn something. These guys are that good. Like I go bang, 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 and they go bang, 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 bang. And they're very smooth and they're very short in their movement, and they don't waste any time doing anything. He's gonna have 4 brief shoots from 9:15 to 1 o'clock. We have a sign-up sheet here. Barry and I are going, sign your name up, and we'll figure out the time and place when we leave and meet, etc., depending on the number of people. I got some handouts for this. So that's pretty much everything I got off the top of my head.
We're at,
Down at Outpost Range,
It's in Lecanto. Lecanto.
yeah.
We have a request to attend the 11 o'clock one because they didn't want to get up in the morning.
That's fine with me.
So that means we have to leave here at 8. No, I'm kidding.
Mike, are you gonna talk about Gander Outdoors?
Oh, yeah. I stopped by Gander Outdoors, coming back from down and visiting a friend, and they're out of the gun business, company-wide. I walked over to look at ammo, and they had none, all the shelves were empty. They were pushed off in the corner, and it was a large section, almost as big as this area of tables where they had guns, and it's all gone. I talked to a guy, he said the chairman of the board made a decision, company-wide, they're getting out of the gun business. I told him, I said, you probably aren't gonna see much of me anymore. And I think that's gonna be true for most people like us. So if you're looking for gun stuff, you can scratch them off your list. So,
I've been scrap shop a long time ago.
yeah, but that's the 3 items for today. Any questions? That's it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
If you want to sign up for Lecanto, which is this coming Tuesday, come up and sign up for it anytime. And we'll put it together and we'll like follow each other over there and spend as much time as you want to. I personally have never seen that range, and it's probably, what, Mike, is that about a year old now, that range?
Several years.
Several years?
A year and a half, 2.
Year and a half, 2 years? Okay, well, I've never seen it, so, you know, I'm gonna kill two birds with one stone by going there and seeing Todd, and then being able to see the range as well. Larry.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Larry. I'm the guy behind the camera all the time. You never get to see me. Oh, I gotta move away from it there.
Best place, Larry.
Best place. New members, please stand up. Yes. All right. Oh, we got a lot of new members. We're gonna ask.
While they're standing,
Yes.
this gentleman here will be running for the board.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Remember who's standing. Go ahead and sit down and relax. But we're going to ask you just kind of do a quick introduction. Sir, would you talk about the board and what you plan to do for Oak Run Shooting Sports Club?
Well, being a new member, I'm not exactly sure what we had joined years ago, but I was working at the time, was unable to make any meetings. So I let the membership lapse. Now I'm thankfully retired, so I can start making the meetings. I don't want to get political, but there's a lot of stuff, that decisions that the board has been making that I'm sure a lot of us just don't agree with. And I said, you know, somebody needs to do something about that. And so I was taking a task. They said, well, then why not you? I went, okay. So, it's not going to work?
No.
What's not going to work?
Anything.
Taking in the task, because we had a member of our club become a board member. He lasted 6 months. And
Right.
he resigned.
I heard about that, and he left, he quit, something like that, because
Yeah,
he gets taken again.
He said he can't work with any of them.
Well,
The board has a clique, and you're not gonna do it.
well, I understand that. There's a little family relation going on there. However, I'm told 3 of the people, their time is up. There's 2 people on there that are supposedly trying to do things for the Oak Run residents. I've been in academia a number of years, so you have to develop critical thinking skills. I mean, that's just all there is to it. You can't just do knee-jerk, you know. And I've had to work with my share of, you can imagine, in academia.
You got my vote. I wish you good luck.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
What's the name?
My name's Don Rogers, R-O-G-E-R, just like Roy Rogers, but not that Roy Rogers. I did have a cousin by that name, but not that one.
Thank you, Don. And your interest in shooting sports, where does that lie?
Just something I've been interested in for a while, just never really had the opportunity to pursue. I was telling Bob earlier, I was displaying my ignorance on a rifle I inherited from my grandfather. It was a 45-70 trap door, and I knew nothing about it. And so I was going to gather information because my son wanted to go hunting with a friend of his. So I was at a gun shop, and I said, my son doesn't have a rifle. Would this be a good one that he could hunt deer with? The guy goes, yeah. I said, oh, okay, so he could take a deer down with that. And the guy looks at me like I got 2 heads. And he says, you could take down the deer and the one standing next to it. And I'm like, what do I know? And he says, you have to understand, when they made this gun, they were hunting buffalo with it. I'm going, okay. So I'm here to learn as much as I am to give what I can, because I'm a novice at this. We do own a few firearms, nothing elaborate. But I just want to learn more about it.
Well, this is the place. 4 years ago, I was the novice as well. So
Okay.
still. Okay, new members, I saw them back
Thank
over
you.
this way. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Jack Stevens, I'm retired Air Force, and I'm new to the area, so join you up and, a lot of guns.
Excellent. I never want to make the Air Force angry with me. Another new member back. Yes.
William Cuso. I'm really glad to be part of this club. This is local and really close to here. I've always been a big collector of guns since before I was a teenager. I was like 10 years old my first gun. Took it apart to see what I could do with it. It's a BB gun, but still. I want to make it more powerful. Became a gunsmith, of course, and glad to be part of this club.
Excellent. Thank you. In the back here as well.
Hi, I'm Trina Anastasia Green, and Mike Watson is my gun yoga. And I am learning and happy to be a new member.
Glad to have you here. So, some other new members over this way I saw? Over here, yes.
George, sorry, Union Rep, Butcher, not looking for a job to cut up animals, never been hunting. Looking for training.
Excellent, excellent. Good place. A lot of knowledgeable people know a lot of knowledgeable trainers. Yes.
My name is Dean Kettner. I'm originally from the Minneapolis area where I was in law enforcement for about 33 years. My wife and I have been down here going on 10 years now. We live in a reserve. 5 years full time. Then got my first shotgun when I was 12. Been shooting ever since. Good story of my life. Hunted forever until I moved down here. I hunted extensively. Take it away, Jeff.
All right.
I'm Jeff Griffiths. I'm a Navy veteran, but I can get along with Air Force guys. We've been coming down for 5 years, part-time. We're down here full-time now, and been interested in guns since I was a kid. We just moved down, knew him in Minnesota. Moved down from Minnesota this year for full-time, and been hunting since I was a kid. Glad to be here.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, this is a wonderful group of members that we have for those novices just getting involved, because there's a lot of help there, as well as the experienced people getting to talk to others. I've got my camera running right now as a video, but I got a note in there. I've got a fellow that I know is looking for a very odd ammo. And when I'm done recording, I'm going to ask some of you if you ever know where he could get some ammunition for it. Also come see me as far as club shirts, and I'm skipping over hats. We had a couple people. There's still the tan hats with the iron-on label, but if you want it embroidered, it's very difficult to make, very expensive, and right now hats are difficult to even find, surprisingly. So we're getting ready to, that's all I got to say about that. But if you want some club shirts, please come see me on that. In fact, I've got a couple on order that I'm going to be picking up. But if I get some more orders here, I'll be picking them up and delivering them to you next week. One of the trips we took recently was Big Daddy. You know that Big Daddy has a facility just on the other side of 200. We went to their local warehouse, which is near Ocala Sportsman's Association. I didn't know where we were going, Barry. I was just following you, and we just kept going. I thought, this can't be much of a warehouse up here on 200 if you've seen their store. Well, it's a different location. Who went on that trip, or who's been there? Okay, you want to mention a few things of high interest to yourselves of what you saw there? Yes?
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting trip, seeing their bullet manufacturing machines and some of the different things that they're getting into. Amazing that the machines come from Turkey. And it looks like once they get rolling, I think we may have a good supply of ammunition in this local area.
Yes, their interest is taking care of the small person, because the manufacturers are always happy to ship skids out, but they're not, when you're a small operation, you're not willing to buy a whole skid. So that's part of Big Daddy's business plan, is to take care of the small person. In fact, they'll even label boxes if you've got a logo or so that you want to put on it.
Also, for reloaders, there is a possibility we may be able to get primers from them. And if there's anybody that's interested in that, we ought to get together and maybe put an order in, so that we're, instead of buying 4 or 5 boxes, we're buying, I don't know, 10, maybe a carton or something.
For those that aren't familiar with the Big Daddy, you can join them. Go to bigdaddy.com is probably it, or just do a search. For 1 penny, I think you can join for a month, and then it's $10. At least for 1 penny, you can see what they have on site, what their member prices are, and see if you want to continue on. They claim if you're, involved in this sport, you'll get your $10 back every month. Mr. Tom?
Right now, his manufacturing operation is set to do 9mm Luger.
Yes.
He's waiting for more equipment to come in, and as that comes online, they'll be moving into different calibers.
Yes, they would be, next one would be the 223. And we got to see that there's 3 machines, all total, they can run at 100 parts per minute maximum. and they were tuning it up, adjusting, making that adjustments while we were there. Other than that, it was a big open warehouse. There wasn't too much else to see there. They do have some used firearms, and they do get some odd items in, so you can find those online. I was at R&D Tactical doing bowling pins, and someone asked me if I was going to go up to Gainesville to do IDPA. I said, "What's up in Gainesville?" It's the Gainesville Target Range is up there. It's about an hour's drive. It's an outdoor range. Talked to the manager up there, and we could do a possible road trip. We have 10 of these set Tuesday, October 19th. If you're interested in going up there, take a look, see what they have. We'll get an orientation, and if you go up as a guest, that orientation that we have on that Tuesday will take care of the orientation so you can go out and shoot. Very unique. They have a couple ranges for guests, but there's a lot more ranges available for members. So it's going to go up there, see what they have, go somewhere nice for lunch, and come on back. Any comments, questions before I turn this back over to Barry? Yes, in the back.
Tuesday, the 19th of October?
Yes. That's a tentative date right now. Did
you look that up to see if it's Tuesday?
I did.
Okay.
All right. Back to Mr. Barry.
All right, thanks, Larry. Last Saturday, we had an open house here, right in this room, and I think part of the new members that we have probably found us through that particular open house. It was well attended for the first couple hours, and at 6:30, everybody went home and went to bed. So I'm not exactly sure why they had it in the afternoon like that. Normally they would have it from 3 to 5 or something like that, but they had it, I think the time was supposed to be 4 to 9. Well, by 6:30, everybody was gone, so they closed it up, and plus it started raining like cats and dogs outside too, so that eliminated some of that. But it was a good turnout, and we got a few. I think we got a few members from that, so it was a good deal. Were you? Yep, very good. Also, I wanted to mention Mike Erickson's celebration of life. I think I sent this out to you. It's going to start at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Larry, do you know if there's going to be like a anything other than just show up and see pictures and stuff?
I have no idea what they plan to have there other than talk about Mike.
Is there a formal? I don't think it's a formal event, do you?
No, it's at his home.
It's at his home, starts at 1 o'clock, and there was no ending time on there. And I didn't call and ask because I didn't want to bother him. But the people that knew Mike, basically the skeet people in here probably knew him the best because he was a good skeet shooter. And he actually got 25 a couple of months ago, maybe before that, you know? It's been some time. But anyway, if you're interested, this Saturday, 1 o'clock at his place. The address, have it right here. It's 8460. Well, it's also on the agenda too, so I don't need to read it to you. Without any further ado, I want to introduce Representative Joe Harding. He's going to speak to us about his first year as a representative.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you all for having me. This is cool to come back. I spoke, you may not remember, last year in 2020 when I was running for office, and it was a Zoom call, and it's great to be here, and there's a lot more of you now in person than there were on that Zoom call, so it's great to see that this group has grown. I decided to run in 2019 because I felt I did not have political experience, but I felt as a conservative that we had two real issues at a minimum. One was that I felt even within my own party, I was frustrated with the type of folks we were continuing to elect. And the second was I felt in general we have an issue in politics where we don't have folks representing us that actually have real world experience. A lot of times they're attorneys or come from family wealth and are able to do that, and I think we're missing that folks that wake up and have to go to work every day, that have children in our schools, that have real skin in the game. So we ran, and thankfully we were successful, and so now we had the opportunity in 2020 to go and serve our first session in the legislature. So if it's all right with you, I was going to do two things. I was going to go over kind of this past legislative cycle in 2020, and then talk a little bit about this next session that's coming up in 2021 and 2022. So, I think the first thing, and I believe I'm not alone when I say this, we're really fortunate to be in Florida and have the governor we have, and I believe have the leadership we have in Florida that has kept our state open and a lot different than many of the states that I know many of you all come from. And so on that track, one of the things that we went into last session believing we had a major financial issue coming in Florida, because Florida's revenue is mostly generated through sales tax. And when we were talking about the state being closed, and we did have shutdowns, as you all know, there was a lot of concern that we were going to have a budget shortfall of up to, Florida had a $92 billion budget in 2019. There was thoughts that we would have about a $10 billion shortfall last year. And what that means is reoccurring spending would have been cut. And what I mean by that, not to get in the weeds, is that you have member project funding that I would do, it may be to build a new road for a school that's being built, or for a new school, or those special, we call them special projects. But reoccurring funding is how departments are funded. So even buildings that were already being built could have been stopped. And thankfully, our governor kept our state open enough that we were able to keep that moving forward. And Florida actually had a record budget last year. So as a conservative, I have concern that we had a record spending budget, but at the same time, I want to also celebrate the fact that that happened because our leadership in Florida, especially our governor, made some decisions that were not popular at the time, but they were the right thing for the state moving forward. So we passed quite a few bills last year in the legislature that I, as a conservative, were things I 100% believe and support. The first bill we passed was a bill called House Bill 1, but it was a bill dealing with rioting and looting. And you've seen it in states, again, many states that some of you all have come from and moved here. You've seen rioting and burning of cities and towns, and it's completely unacceptable. And it's happened because of, frankly, because of local woke leaders who won't deal with the harsh reality that we have a problem. And if someone breaks into your business and loots your business, they can't say it's because of justice. That you can't burn down someone's business and then claim you're a protester. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. And so in Florida, we basically made it to where you are. This seems common sense to most of us, but if you break that door down and enter my business and burn my business, not only is the person that broke the door, but the other 20 people that walk in there behind that person, you're responsible for breaking and entering and destroying my business. There were several other measures that we did on that bill that really strengthened Florida's law enforcement, and I believe is sending a strong message, and why I don't believe you've seen some of the things happen in Florida, or see some of the protests that have happened in other states happen in Florida, and they're because of laws like that we have in Florida. We also passed a voting bill. This bill was extremely controversial, and it was interesting watching the arguments against it. But the highlights of what we did was that you have to show your ID to vote. If you voted by mail in 2020, that we're not automatically just going to send you a ballot to vote again in the next election cycle. You should have to request a ballot every year, so we know that if something happens to you, that someone else that moved into your house isn't voting for you. It just seems like common sense. The other one is, we heard terms, and we were very concerned about this locally with things called ballot harvesting, where groups would go into a neighborhood and they knew that there were ballots that were sent. It's public record. You are able to work with the supervisor's office and find out that ballots were mailed out and they weren't returned. So you had activist groups going out and saying, I'll take your ballot. If you fill your ballot out, I'll take that ballot for you and I'll turn it in for you. Well, that's not how the intent of our constitutional right to vote was supposed to work. It was your right to vote, and you were the one voting, not someone else voting for you by helping facilitate that. So now we've made it to where you have to sign a form that says that, yes, this person can turn my ballot in for me, and yes, I'm aware that they are turning this ballot in for me, that you weren't cooed into it or pulled into something. Another piece of it was that if you have a ballot box, and this was also happening where we had drop boxes, and there were fraudulent drop boxes. You could put a sign that says, drop your ballot off here with a box, and people would drop their ballots in there, but that ballot box wasn't an official box of the supervisor of elections office, so those ballots could go nowhere. They in some cases weren't being utilized. Those ballots were disappearing. So in Florida, we said if you're going to have a vote box, first it has to be from the supervisor of elections office, which was already the law, but now you have to have a person has to be there that is registered with the supervisor of elections office. So the supervisor of elections office knows that someone's there, and someone is always with those ballots. They're never left alone. And again, those are, every time I talk about that bill, I always wonder how it's controversial, but unfortunately it is, because there is unfortunately a idea that if you disagree with someone on an issue and you can't beat them on the issue, you just call them every name you can and try to label them in a way that is offensive to people like myself, and we dealt with that. So I'll move on from that bill, but that bill definitely took a lot of energy of the legislator this past cycle. Bob, you had something?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
If you're at that point, I can't hear real well.
Okay, I'll get louder.
Okay. Are we still using Dominion machines in Florida?
Yeah. So we are, and I think, and I will get questions at the end because I don't want to get. I've got a couple other bills I want to talk about, but yes, we are. I think you'll see the legislator looking at that this year again. We're going to bring this bill. We accomplished a few of the things we wanted to do. I think you'll see that coming back up again this year.
I'm not sure how much truth I can believe in the news media, but as far as everything I can see, the people from Dominion should be tried for treason. They had proof that they got it on video that he's telling the workers, I got it fixed, don't worry about it. I mean, are they doing anything with that?
So I don't know of a situation. Here's where I'm at with this whole issue, and I've spent time in our supervisor's office. I've seen the machines we use. We do not use Dominion here in Marion County. But I have seen machines that are being used. I feel confident in our voting system in Florida. I believe that there are issues in other states, and I don't blame the equipment. I actually think that there are elected officials in those areas that should be held accountable for administrative problems and issues. And so here's how I feel about this. I get asked a lot about the voting issue in general, and I believe there are legitimate concerns, but I look at life, you've got silos, right? And my concerns are Florida, and I want to make sure I'm a good advocate for my district and my residents. And if there's concerns in Florida, I'm going to focus on those, but I do believe in other states there are concerns that are had, and I think unfortunately in other states their legislator has been really weak on looking into those. So you're going to see this year in Florida, you're going to see another bill come up where we're going to look at transparency. We're going to go further into that issue, and we'll see what we do in Florida. I'm still learning as we're in September, and our session really officially doesn't start until January, so there's a lot of work to be done between now and then of figuring out what we're going to focus on specifically. I do want to shift a couple things we did that pertain to the Second Amendment, and I think would interest this group. So we passed two bills in Florida that were signed into law that directly do impact gun owners and gun activists. So The first was that there was state statute that prevented a church or a group that meets on school property after hours, and we do have several churches in Ocala that meet and use school buildings for their church. And there were state statutes that prevented that church from having armed security on campus. This is not when the school is having school. This is on the weekend when there's no one else there but the folks that are having church. And so we allowed, again, for me it's just common sense, but we allowed for the church to be able to have security as long as they, again, follow all the same protocols you would follow at a regular facility. So there has to be someone that has a concealed carry license or has some training, and that is now a law. The second one, and this, what was your name again? Tom. You hit on something, you talked about the word preemption. Last year we had a bill that did pass and the governor signed into law because you had local municipalities that had an activist agenda and were preventing stores like Big Daddy Guns. You talked about Big Daddy Guns. If you talk to Sherry and Tony, their owners, they'll tell you that they've had issues in Gainesville with Gainesville not allowing them to have actually working against them, trying to, in every way they could, try to close down their business. So we said that if you weren't violating zoning laws, that they couldn't profile your business just because you sold guns, and they didn't like that. As long as you were following the rules, so that was a bill that we did pass that prevented, and there were several cities and counties that had restrictive gun laws on the books that they had passed locally from their local boards that prevented gun stores and gun shops from opening in their cities and in their towns. And so when you talk about a state issue, and really the Second Amendment's a federal issue, but it's the state legislator that created the federal government, that created the Constitution that we have. And so when you look at what our role as a legislator is, protecting a constitutional right is one of our most fundamental jobs. So that leads me to a point, and I'm excited to see this group grow, and I'm sure in the future you're going to have, as 2022 gets closer, you'll have more candidates and folks that you're going to either within this group or you all are going to interact with. And when I started to run for office, I asked the question of myself, and I started to ask it of other people: what is the job of government? What is our job? What is our fundamental job? And you'll hear people that are much smarter and are better speakers than me, but they'll tell you it's infrastructure, it's public safety, and those are important. Those are good. To fund our schools, that's good, that's important. But the most important job of our elected officials and our government is to protect our liberties, to protect our constitutional rights. And all the rest of that comes after that, because if our Constitution doesn't start with saying to build good roads, make sure that's our First Amendment is to make sure that the government builds good roads. That's our duty. That's a job that we have. But our fundamental job is to protect our rights, and it's pretty clear and spelled out in our Bill of Rights what those are. And so I always try to hit on that, because too often, and this was a frustration I had that got me into politics, was too often elected officials will change their story depending on what group they're talking to. And I've been in groups that it's very uncomfortable to say that I'm a constitutional conservative, and I believe that in defending the First Amendment, but I can't defend the First Amendment if I don't defend and support the Second Amendment. And that's not always popular to say, but you be real to who you are, and for me, that's who I am, and that is regardless of your party or your affiliation. That's what you want, is your elected officials to protect your liberties. So I have tried to work and do that, and I think as we go through this next session, which I'll talk about now, what some of our priorities are, I believe that you'll see I believe we have a good leadership in our Florida legislature, and I'm glad to be a part of that. So now I'm going to shift and just talk for a couple minutes about what I'm going to work on, what we're working on this coming cycle. So this past week, in fact, last night I got back from Tallahassee. From now and through December, every other week I'll be in Tallahassee. So it's 1 week up there, 1 week home. And on the weeks that I'm up there, we're in committee meetings reviewing bills that are being proposed for next session, which session officially kicks off January 11th. And if you're not familiar with Florida's legislative season, Florida, we have it in our Constitution that we have to complete our session in 60 days. So that clock officially starts January 11th and then expires March 11th. And we have 60 days to complete session. Now, we also use the weeks ahead, which don't count towards the 60 days, to actually get our bills in line, to understand what we're going to be passing, what laws we're going to be passing in those 60 days. But something that is really important this session and should matter to all of you, and it's going to be the biggest job the legislator has this year, is that Florida's Constitution requires two things of our legislators that we have to do. The first is we have to balance a budget every year, and we have a constitutional amendment in Florida that it has to be a balanced budget. We can't run deficit. We can't use deficit. We can't go into a deficit. We have to balance our budget. And the second job that we have from our Constitution is that every 10 years we have to handle redistricting. And Florida, we're following in 2022, we are officially in redistricting, and I have the opportunity to serve on one of the redistricting committees. I'm on the Congressional Redistricting Committee, and that is extremely important because we are going to redraw the maps for our state legislator, and we're going to redraw the maps for our congressional, our congressmen and women. Yesterday's meeting I don't always encourage watching the Florida channel because it is pretty boring most of the time, but it was one of the more interesting committees I've ever been a part of. And if you would like to go back and look at it, you could go to floridachannel.org, and all the meetings, everything in our legislature is public record. All of them are recorded, so you could go back and watch it. As the legislator on that committee, there's a lot of liability for me. One of them is that common sense, but I can't take a bribe from someone to draw the map that benefits a particular party or candidate. I also can't try to influence where the lines go. It has to be data driven. It can't be my opinion and how I want to influence it. So there's actually requirements. Any note I take in committee meeting, even if it's just on my personal notebook, is subject to public records. And so if I make a note that looks like I'm slanted a certain direction, that's actually could be a public record. So it's an awesome responsibility. But I would encourage you to go to, and I'm going to give you the website, but I'm going to pull it up on my phone because I want to make sure I get it right. But it is the FloridaRedistricting.gov, FloridaRedistricting.gov, and I would ask you all as voters to go to that website and understand what's happened in Florida with our growth. So we talk a lot about the growth of Florida. We're at almost 22 million people now. We have an average of 1,000, somewhere between 900 to 1,000 people a day moving into Florida. But that is not across the board, all of Florida equally distributed. So obviously that makes sense to you all. You see the growth around where we're at right now. And then south of here with the villages, the growth happening there. But when you get up into the panhandle, there's actually been mass exodus out of it. And so it's going to be a very trying process with the redistricting lines because it is not, you'll hear catchy terms thrown around like we need to make sure we have fair and equally drawn districts. Well, if you drew districts that were just a square and you divided up Florida into squares, you would have significant inequities that would happen because there's rural areas that have very few people in them and then there's urban areas that have a lot of people in them. So the challenges are immense, but there is nothing more important because that shapes the legislator and that shapes our Congress as well. And you know right now I think we're 8 congressional votes, 8 seats away from being at a tie right now, and so This is extremely important. This is happening all across the country. Redistricting is happening this year, and it is important as voters to be involved and watch that. There's actually a process that you can submit requests to try to go and speak to a committee meeting in Tallahassee if you wanted to, or if you aren't able to travel, you can actually submit a letter that with your concerns about the redistricting process, if you had a concern, there's maps that are interactive on that FloridaRedistricting.gov website that you can go and see where the growth is at in Florida. And, it is extremely important. So for me, my priorities outside of the duty and of serving on that redistricting committee, I also serve on 5 other committees. So I serve on Education and Employment Committee. That's the big education committee. So all things education from K through 12 to higher ed will go through that committee. I serve on Post-Secondary Education, which is focused on all things higher education. I'm really proud of our speaker that he made a change. He made a commitment when I started running 2 years ago that he was going to make our higher education committee not just higher education as in college. It was going to be all education, all continued learning that happens after high school. And that includes technical schools, trade schools, all things that are extremely important and should be considered equally to a higher ed or a typical traditional higher education is in a 4-year degree. I serve on as the vice chairman for local administration and veteran affairs. That was a promotion I got this year. I served on the committee last year, and this year I got moved up to vice chairman. And on that, we talked about the preemption issue, anything that has to do with local government and the state legislators' interaction with local government will come through that committee, and all things veteran affairs. So for me, on the veteran issue, I am an advocate for getting a veterans nursing home and another veterans nursing home in Marion County to this area, but also increasing our funding for mental health for veterans. We see a significant issue in Florida with our Vietnam veterans, but also now the veterans that are my age coming out of the Iraq War and Afghanistan War. So I serve on that local administration committee. I serve on healthcare appropriations. So that's extremely important. The state spends more money on healthcare and education. Between those 2 items, that's 75% of our budget. So I have the opportunity to serve on those 2 committees. And so for me, that healthcare committee is extremely important. So I'm going to be sponsoring bills. I have a bill that I'm working on that does pertain to the Second Amendment, and we are working to file that here in the next few weeks. You talked about constitutional carry. If you're not familiar with that term and what that means, that basically means that it's your constitutional right to bear arms. And so we don't need to have another layer of government that you have to submit a form and pay a fee and pay for a license. If you can in my opinion, if you can go legally purchase the firearm, you ought to be able to legally carry that. But I also think there's got to be some responsibility there. So I'm not there when it comes to laws on open carry. I may get, for me, I'm just not there because as a Second Amendment advocate, the reason you would carry is to be able to defend yourself in the element of surprise and not to just for the show of carrying. So we're working through where that path and where my role is going to fall in that bill, but there is a constitutional carry bill filed already in Florida. So I'm filing a bill that's going to go after the Department of Agriculture specifically. Our concealed carry process in Florida goes through the Department of Agriculture. So if you would like to get a concealed carry license in Florida, the process is you can either go online and submit a form and go through their online portal. You have to provide a certificate that you took a hunter safety course, and then you pay a $53 fee to the state of Florida, and then you have to get fingerprinting done. That costs $41, and that is what you pay to the state. But in most counties, Marion County is one of them, you can go to your local DMV. You're looked at on Southeast 25th Avenue up in the northeast part of Ocala, and you can do those same forms and application, but you also have to pay a convenience fee to the tax collector, which makes sense. He's the one helping facilitate that. And per state statute, that is capped at $22. So to recap, you pay $53 for your license, $22 convenience fee at the DMV, and then you pay a $41 fingerprinting fee. And then the next layer is that the Department of Agriculture, per Florida statute, has 90 days to either approve or reject your application. So that's where my issue lies. We have had many constituents, and if you, Haley Austin is my district secretary. She's in the back here and is a great member of our team, but she deals with a lot of these constituent calls. And we'll have constituents call that have applied, and they're at 160 days, 120 days waiting on their approval. And so I've been a really very big critic of our ag commissioner, because I think she's been worried about running for governor since the day she was elected as Florida's agriculture commissioner, and has neglected, and that's the kindest word I can find at the moment, she has neglected her duty that she was elected for and is paid for as our ag commissioner. So we're going to go after the fact that this is happening. We have constituents that are, one that was at 174 days, and the only reason he got approved was because Haley blew up their phones and made sure that they approved him. It could have sat another couple months. So those are just the people that know to call their state rep to ask. I believe there are thousands of other people in the same situation. So we're going to create a penalty for the Department of Agriculture to where if you neglect your job to do your job, then you should refund at a minimum, refund the licensure fee to the applicant. And B, I think there ought to be some type of audit of your department to understand what are you all doing. You have a lot of staff, you have an elected leader, gets paid a lot of money. What is your department actually doing all day? So, I mean, that's a legitimate question that I think needs to be asked. So we're running that bill. We're going to also reduce the time from 90 days to 30 days, because I think 90 days is already too long. You can go to Rural King, Bass Pro, any gun shop, and get a background check in 15 minutes to 20 minutes. So why is it taking the Department of Agriculture that has FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, next door to them? Why is it taking them 90 plus days to do a simple background check that should take 15 minutes? So we're going to limit that, and we're also going after the fee. I don't think the Second Amendment doesn't say, it says shall not be infringed, doesn't say if you pay a $53 fee, you shall get that right. It doesn't say that. So I want to eliminate the fee altogether, and that's going to be the toughest part of that bill, and we'll see how far we go with it. At a minimum, if we reduce it, that would be a win, because that's a tax cut to us, the constituents that are paying that fee. So probably a lot more than you wanted to hear on the concealed carry process, but I think it's extremely important. Goes back to my first comment, which is that our job as elected leaders is to protect liberty and to also hold government accountable. And when you see the bureaucracy fail us, the constituents, then we have to, as the elected leader, do something about it and step up and talk about it. And so we are. And then the last thing, and I want to make sure I give you time to ask questions. I ran 2 bills last year on vocational education, non-degree seeking high school students who are trying to better their life by getting some type of certificate and training that could put them to work immediately after high school. And we had success with that, and we're going to be revisiting that this year. So I believe that the role of education should not be just to be a conduit. High school should not just be a conduit to go to college. It should be your vehicle to get a job in life and better yourself and your family, and to be prepared for the real world. And so for some students that may be college, but some students that may be a mechanic or an HVAC technician or an electrician. And we know there's shortages in all those areas, and there's a lot our legislator can do. And some of it would be baffling if you understood that the grades are weighted different depending on what your career track is in high school. The classes aren't all funded the same. And there's just very fundamental things like that we are going to be working on and exposing as part of our job this next session. I spent time, you talked about Westport, 2 weeks ago I spent some time in Denellen at the Denellen High School, which isn't too far away either. And they have a welding program at Denellen High School that is at capacity. They have 120 students, 1 teacher, 4 welding machines. And so when I talked to him, his number one issue is we wanted to be treated the same and get funding to get more welding machines, to get to expand our area to be able to have more students. We'd have twice as many students if we had more room and more machines. And when I'm looking at that, I looked around that room, I'd never seen students that excited to be in school. They were coming up and showing me projects and things they had done. And I also spent time in that high school we went to an algebra class, we went to a healthcare class. I can tell you they weren't getting out of their seats coming to talk to me about all the cool things they were doing. These students were excited. And if you can excite them and get them working with their hands, you know, a lot of us, and many of you took shop or took home ec or took some type of mechanic class in high school. We've got to bring that back and make that a standard thing in our schools. And so for me, that's top one or two of my time. If you all keep sending me back to the legislator, when we leave, my hope is that our vocational programs are treated equally in our schools, and that we have a vocational program in every high school in Florida. So that is something we're working on. I want to give you all time to ask questions on anything yes, sir.
Joe, one of the things that affects everyone here and everyone in the state of Florida is what's going on with our homeowners insurance situation right now. Can you shed some light on what's happening, and are you doing anything that might help us out with this?
That's a good question, and I should have hit on that at the beginning. There was a bill last year that was passed, and ultimately it passed in the House, didn't go through in the Senate at the 11th hour. It's going to come back this year. What we're trying to do is there are many. It's a multifaceted problem that's driving up the insurance rates. You know, you'll hear the insurance companies talk about hurricanes and natural disasters, which are a factor in driving up rates. But there's a lot of fraud. Fraud is the biggest driver of insurance rates. So you may not see it in Oak Run, but I promise you, if you go to some of your neighbors that aren't in gated communities, but it happens in here too, where someone will leave a hanger on your door that says, "Hey, I noticed you have a loose shingle on your roof. Call us, we can do an insurance claim," something to that effect. So they'll take your simple roof fix and turn it into a roof replacement. Your insurance company gets hit with that, and now your $600 repair is a $15,000 roof. Well, we pay for that. Us ratepayers are paying for that because you have a guy that's out to scan the system, knows a contractor who knows how to work that, knows how to exactly what to say and do to get a claim from the insurance company. The insurance company claims it. But if he's doing it to one, we're doing it to thousands and thousands in Florida. So that's a piece of it. The other one is that Citizens Insurance in Florida, which is our state subsidized insurance company, and that was initially created in about 2008 because we had an issue that was very prevalent right here in Marion County, and most of you may not have even been a part of it for being in this community, but there was a lot of fraud going on with sinkhole claims. So you would have an older home and there was cracks in the home, and you would call a geotechnical company. They would come in and say, "Oh yeah, you've got a sinkhole under your house," and they would hit the insurance company for $180,000 foundation repair job. So now the insurance company would fix it, and then they would drop them of their policy so they didn't have insurance. So we created, government trying to fix a problem typically creates another problem. So we created an insurance agency that the idea was that we were going to provide coverage to people that couldn't get coverage in situations like the example I gave you. The problem is that the private sector rates continue to go up. Now Citizens Insurance rates are actually competitive because any of you could get a quote from Citizens Insurance. And so as the government has insured more, it's also affecting so now the private sector is competing with government insurance. It's a terrible, terrible idea. So it's driven rates up because again, when there's a claim or fraud or there's a bad apple, we, as all of us, pay for it. If you have insurance, you pay for it. So we're going to go this year again after some of the fraud stuff. We also have to set some caps on insurance companies. They shouldn't just be able to raise your rates every year regardless. And tell me an insurance company that cut rates. I'd love to hear about them. Every year that goes up. Every year your car insurance goes up. Every year your homeowner's insurance goes up. And we've got to figure out how to get involved and cap some of that, because you can't just keep going up every year. What are you doing better to provide me better coverage? And then many times, coverage is actually getting reduced because they've been scammed a few times, so they're extremely careful to protect their interests, which as a company, I could get that. But at the same time, as a consumer, we get stuck paying the bill. So there was a Representative Rommel, he's a guy out of Naples area, has probably the hardest hit area for home insurance. A guy that I'm going to defer to again on this year and be a part of it. We helped last year with that bill, and I'm hoping this year we can pass it, specifically addressing the fraud. And that hope is that starts the process of trying to reduce rates. But another thing you've got is the home values have increased in Florida. I know you probably got your tax assessments in the last couple months, and I bet none of your taxes went down. They probably went up significantly, potentially. And that's part of that, because your insurance is affected by your assessed property values. So that's one of the problems as we grow as fast as we have. We are creating some of those problems as well by our rates, our values going up. So as far as the tax value issue, and I'm opening up another can of worms, but on that issue specifically, I would be talking to your commissioners and to your tax collector to understand the funds in the budget they have, holding them accountable for the dollars that they're spending. We have good leaders in Marion County, so that's not a shot at them, but I do think that as we raise taxes, you also realize that they already had a budget last year, a record budget. We're probably gonna have another record budget for the county. What are you using all those property tax dollars for? That's an important question to be asking. So I don't know if that answered hope it helped you. Yes, sir.
I'm visually impaired. I have macular degeneration, and I got a piece of paper in the mail from a government agency, said like $500 deduction for your property tax. I called, this is back during the heyday of COVID, so to speak. The lady that I finally got a hold of said, you get $500, but it's over a lifetime, so you may get $5 a month. $5 a year. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't even fill out the damn paperwork for $5. So, when is somebody gonna do something about sight impairment in government when there isn't anything out there for it? They don't give us a break on our property taxes. If you're a wounded veteran, which I can understand, I have no problem with, you don't pay any property taxes.
Yeah.
So I would like to see, I don't care if it wasn't but $50, a sight impairment deduction for property tax or whatever, because I've got 2 readers I bought, so I can read my mail. I cannot read email, and I have a 32-inch monitor. But I got 2 readers I can read my mail with that magnifying light. I paid $1,000 for one and $2,000 for the other. And after a used one, the new ones are $6,000 and $3,000. So that's expense I've got that just because I've got macular, I have to spend that money for a reader to read the mail with.
Yeah.
Where everybody else in the world doesn't. They don't have that expense.
So I don't have I want to give you an answer, and I don't have one. What I will do is, Haley is my district secretary. We're going to talk to probably the Department of Elder Affairs, but we're going to figure out what's out there that we could do, because I don't have an answer. I'm assuming that break that you did get was probably from the county, probably from the property appraiser's office is my assumption, but I don't know that. We'll have to find that out.
I don't know. I talked to the county and the state.
Okay.
I got a free recorder in the mail, or the use of a free recorder, and they send me a tape every 2 weeks, and you can't listen to all the tapes they send you.
Well, Haley's going to get your address. We're going to find out what you did get and what else maybe is out there, and if there's improvement in work as the legislator needs to do to fix it. So she'll come see you as soon as I'm done talking. We're gonna figure out an answer to your question. I don't have one, but we'll figure out how to help.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
If by chance, excuse me, you need to get a hold of Haley, is there a phone number? Or
Yes, so she'll give you.
Okay.
Yep, she'll give you your card. And our office, so you know, our office is at the Central Florida Community College. If you drive by there, it's the big glass Ewers building. My office is on the first floor. And so every day she's in there. And she's gonna give you a card with her phone number. But anything that comes up that is dealing with a state agency specifically, that's a great resource we have, we'll be able to help with. But even on local issues, we've got some relationships there to at least know, most of the time it's who to call, right? Who do you don't want to just call the general number, who do you call to get a real answer to something like this? So.
And on the bill, you mentioned about the concealed carry.
Yes, sir.
When would that time frame? When do you expect that hopefully to pass?
Yeah, so that is I put it through drafting, I got the bill back out. It will get filed probably by the 1st of October. It'll have a bill number, and I'll make sure when I file it, I'll send it to Barry so he can share the bill number so you're able to track it. It's myfloridahouse.gov is the website for the Florida House. And if you go on there, you'll see all 120 of our members on there. And you can actually go and click on find me, and then click on my name, or click on my picture. And from there, you'll see the bills I've filed. I think I only have one bill filed at the moment. As we get closer to by October and November, I'll probably have I get 7 bill spots that I can fill. So by the end of the year, I'll have all 7 of my bill spots filled. And so then we'll start sharing, if it's especially on a Second Amendment bill, I'll start sharing it with you all so you can track it and know what committee. And this is where as the electorate, you can be so helpful, is if it's in Civil Justice Subcommittee, for instance, which is probably its first stop, you could send an email, which is you can navigate through that website, you send an email to that chair and say, we're requesting that you hear this bill, we think this is a good bill. And that matters. I can tell you that we receive hundreds and thousands of emails that are spam, because there's groups out there that will say, for $5, pay us, we will email all your legislators, and you'll get emails from people that are not constituents, and it's a copy-paste email that I've seen 100 times before. If a real constituent sent a personalized email, we look for that. We want that, because most of what we get is special interest, cut and paste emails that aren't from real people. And when we see someone send an email that's real, you'd be amazed how you're probably going to get a call or a response back pretty quickly from someone that's excited to see that a real person was reaching out.
Good to know, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The cut and paste emails, are they a waste of time? Do they influence legislators? Because if somebody's sitting down, yes, there are groups, like you said, that send those out, but somebody's still sitting there filling it out, cutting and pasting it. Do the legislators ignore those, or they just don't carry as much weight?
It's a really good question. They carry weight in this way. Imagine in session, we could go back and pull the numbers, but I would bet from March to April in that 60 days, probably receive 10 or 15,000, that's probably low, probably close to 20,000 emails. So what we end up having to do so that we're able to actually know what the email's about, we filter, there's a filter function, we filter them so we know, and then they're in a folder based on bill number. They do influence in the sense that if you're pushing for a big controversial bill and we're getting thousands of emails on it, they are an influence, because you at least see there are thousands of people reaching out. This is important. So you'll see reps start to, even ones that are waffly, not sure where they stand, they'll get forced them to make a decision and make a stand, because they're getting thousands against it, thousands for it. They got to decide. They can't just be in the middle. And then once you make a stand, then you get blown up by the other side, but at least you don't have two sides hitting you. So it does influence it in the sense it forces reps to make decisions. In the off time, like right now where it's relatively slow and we're not in the middle of session, they do mean even more, because you have more time to review them. But my staff is Haley, and I have one other staff member that I'm allowed to hire. So there's only so much those two, ladies can do in reviewing those emails. So when it gets into session and there's thousands and thousands of them, it does get harder and harder.
Today, our society is send an email,
Yep.
and it's so easy to do versus sitting down writing a letter. And those of us that are politically active, we do send emails.
I would ask
Cut and
them.
paste, I love them, because
Yep.
they're easy to send.
What I would ask as your rep is send the email. That doesn't hurt, but call. Haley's gonna take your phone call. We have a voice. If she, like right now, she's not in the office, she's here, so she's gonna go back and check the voicemails, and she'll tell me, hey, we had 6 people call about this bill, and this is their address, and this is their concerns. Should we set up a meeting? Should we call them back? And that we'll start having those conversations. So that would be my ask is second to the email, call, especially if it's a really important issue. Please do that. Yes, sir.
I've got a question concerning nothing that you talked about, but last week, there were 16,000 people underneath a bridge in Texas that are being distributed throughout the United States. Has the federal government in any way touched base with our state government to let them know who they're sending and how many they're sending? Of course not. Or are they just sending?
No, the answer is no to that. Absolutely not. And if it's a huge crisis happening. We are on the same page on this, and it is alarming. They're not, we talk about the coronavirus. I have concerns about coronavirus just like everybody else. I want to stay safe and stay healthy and protect my kids. And we're not testing at the border. We're taking folks in buses and busing them all over the country, but yet we're doing mask mandates and vaccine requirements for our citizens. Well, let's just be careful about what are we bringing into our communities.
So you have absolutely no idea how many you're sending us?
I don't. I do know that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, that the governor and our secretary has been openly talking about that we need to understand this and get on top of it. And so the right folks that can push on this are I believe, similar and right-minded on this concern. So, but I don't know a number. I wish I did. Probably be scared to. Yes, sir.
Touching on this gentleman's statement and what you had said about being on a redistricting committee, if they flood Florida with illegal immigrants and a year or two from now turn them into voters, how is that going to affect your redistricting?
It's a good question. You may recall that the previous president wanted on the census to be a citizenship check mark, that you were a citizen or you were not. That requirement is part of what delayed the census reporting in the first place. We're months behind where we should be. Where it's going to affect, if that was to happen, and I have very similar concerns, would be the next redistricting cycle in 10 years. And these midterms in Florida and throughout the country are so critical because we better get ahead of that. And to your point,
In 10 years, we've lost it.
I agree.
It's
So
too late.
we got 2022 coming up. Every election's important. This one is even more so. Because we're going to decide, our midterms are going to decide our majority in Congress. And
Not to argue with you, but my question pertained to, is there anybody looking at all these illegals that are coming in? And if they are given the right to vote, how is that going to affect our areas? Because if they give them the right to vote and they've shipped thousands and thousands and thousands of them in, we're now a minority.
I agree that my concern here, it goes back to this voter bill we passed in Florida, where you've got to present an ID, you got to prove that you're a resident and a citizen of Florida. That is where in our legislature we've got to toughen up in Florida. And there is a bill this year on E-Verify process. Again, we're gonna touch that again this year. But I understand your question is someone looking into it? And I would say
Does anybody know how many of these hundred thousands of people are being shipped to Florida, to Texas, to the red states?
Sure, Mayorkas does. Give him a call, the secretary.
But
no, he only works 18 hours a day.
Unfortunately, I don't feel at the federal level there is. I believe in the state of Florida.
I didn't know if anybody at our level was keeping track of this.
And the state level,
they could flip our whole district.
in the state level, we do have these concerns, and you're going to see it continue to come up. And I think one of the ways we're going to try to do is keep making sure that we're clear that you've got to be a citizen, a legal citizen of Florida to vote. But it's not, I understand. Your question is who's looking at this, and I think in our legislature, you're going to see it in the legislature this year in Florida. You're going to see us continue to try to toughen up that process. On a federal level, I don't have confidence in that there is that. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
On tail end of the news this morning, I caught something about sanctuary cities in Florida. I don't know if I'm sure you must be aware of it.
Yep.
And there's going to be a vote on it, or it's gone to court. And the judge I think is going to allow it.
Well, Florida, the legislator, about 2 years ago, outlawed sanctuary cities and counties. So, yes, and that is a law, that's the law of the land. There are activist groups that are suing, and it's working through the courts. It's going to ultimately end up in the Supreme Court when it's all said and done. The reality is, the legislator, we passed the law, and we better continue to understand how important these judge appointments are. Because I feel confident when it gets to the Supreme Court that they'll make the right decision. But some of these appellate courts are liberal holdovers that don't align with my beliefs. So, yes, sir.
What does the state legislature have to do with appellate courts? Do they have anything to do with it, or nothing at all?
So, if it's a federal court, then no, because that would be an appointee of the feds. But the Supreme Court wouldn't be affected by the state our state Supreme Court would be affected by the legislator, because our governor, who we hold accountable and send laws to his desk to sign, he's the one that appoints the judges. Federally, obviously, the president does. And we know, I think we've seen enough rulings in the last couple months to know that we are extremely close, maybe have a very slim margin in the Supreme Court that's more conservative. But we just better hope that this president right now doesn't get another appointment.
Sure.
Or four.
That's right, or four. Well, thank y'all for having me here, and I appreciate you, and please know we are always available, and as you have concerns, again, we'll give you my contact information, but also you can, any representative anywhere in the state, myfloridahouse.gov, you go there, their address to their office, their phone number for their office is on there, and so rallying and advocating to those reps is as important as me, because we can be the best conservative voice. We're one of 120. And so the biggest help that you all can provide is lobbying the rest of the legislator. If there's a bill that we agree on, help me get it heard and get it passed. And that's where you all can be a great help for that as well. So, yes, sir. Yeah, one more question.
Just touching on what you just said, what is the best way for us to lobby?
Yep. The best way is an email and a phone call. And sometimes if it's important, an issue, and it's at a busy time, keep calling. Because you may find they're getting flooded with folks. Keep calling until you get someone on the phone, and you're going to hear from them where normally you'll get a sense of where their member is at on the issue, and then hopefully get a next step. He supports this, and here's what you could do to help. Or he's against it, and here's why. And at least you know from there, okay, here's where I need to work. Yeah. So, thank y'all again. Appreciate it.